Okay, and yep, audio's good, video's good, and we are ready for our next stream. Okay, I don't have really a topic today. I was trying to kind of zone in on what would be appropriate. I really don't have anything specific. We're going to talk about a couple of different points. I think we'll get into some multidimensionality today, just due to the Quantum Mania Marvel movie. We're going to use that as we're going to delve into consciousness with that movie, I think, a little bit today. And I do want to talk a little bit about kind of losing what happens with our humanity and human, the difference between those two. Now, I haven't opened the chat. I'll open it in about 20-25 minutes. I like to get a couple of things out, and then I'll open it up where I'll answer questions that anybody has about anything we talked about today or any topic. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's consciousness related topic. Okay, so I'm going to go into Quantum Mania, multidimensionality in a minute. I do want to talk about human and humanity and the differences there. Because we'll talk a lot in consciousness about our love for humanity and how we have to do a lot of the deep soul work because there's a love for humanity. But that is not a love for our human aspect. And our human aspect and humanity are two completely different things. Humanity is the consciousness of all the souls. To me, this is what kind of humanity means. It's the consciousness of all the souls that are in a human body. You know, no, that's humanity. Humanity brings out the best of us, which is not our human aspect. Those are two separate things. So you see a lot of people kind of talking about humanity and human as they're the same thing, and they aren't the same thing. Your humanity does not come from your human aspect, okay? It just doesn't. Our humanity comes from our soul aspects. It comes from our galactic aspects. It comes from all of our aspects that is not our human aspect. And it's kind of a paradox because we do call it humanity, and it has nothing to do with our human aspect. I know I had a situation yesterday where I had a sick animal, right? And it's kind of a feral, kind of half feral cat that I have been feeding. So not 100%, definitely not like my house cats. So he had a broken leg, or he had a hurt leg at the time. I didn't know if it was broken or not. He was limping he was limping, and I was like, I got to get him to a vet. So managed to catch him without getting scratched. And it was so hard to find a vet that would take him, right? And it was very frustrating because every vet I went to, and there was three within like 10 minutes of this house, either not open, which, I mean, that's kind of a whole different animal, or open, but won't take animals. Won't take animals. And so I finally found an emergency care that wasn't really an emergency care, but something kind of in a separate quadrant over there. I got into a different reality where I could actually find a place to take him. And he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. So it really got me to think about the little, kind of losing our way in a sense as human aspects, and you can see this a lot in all of medical communities now. You know, it's not just in veterinarian work, it's also in medical communities in general. And I've noticed it a lot, and there's just not a consistency in how we treat a lot of different things. There is a hierarchy also, I would say, in animals as we do to sort of people. And this is the kind of the human realities. When we talk about our human realities, we look at the inconsistencies there. You know, and a lot of people think, well, what's so bad about the human realities? Why is it so distorted? What makes it distorted? Now, besides the selfishness of the human reality, we look at what we put up with in a human reality, because if it doesn't directly impact us, and even when it does directly impact us, we'll still put up with it. Until we feel like our life's threatened, and then usually that's when we will stop putting up with certain things. But we put up with a lot of stuff when it does not affect us. You know, we can have, you know, so many people that are homeless in this country, and I live in the United States, but in this country, and that's okay as long as that's not us. And a lot of people will say, well, it's not okay, but what are we doing to transform that? And not even transform that for each one of us in a global sense. What are we doing to transform that in our communities? What are we doing in our communities? You know, there are so many people that say it's not okay, but don't do anything to show that it's not okay. These are the human systems we talk about. This is what our human aspect supports. So when we talk about supporting a human system, that's what we're talking about. That's what that means. We're supporting that system. If we in any way to say that that's okay, because it's not us. And if it's not us, then that's okay to deal with that. And there's a hierarchy as to who gets what. And you can definitely see that playing out all around humanity now. You know, all around all the human realities, you're seeing that play out. You're seeing the class system the chasm, I guess, in that very succinctly. It's not as veiled as it used to be. Now, a lot of that's because it's time for it to be unveiled. Because a lot of this pushes people forward to say, this is not okay. You know, this isn't okay for us to deal with this. But normally we don't say that till it affects us. And that's part of humans speaking up for themselves, which is a big part of awakening and a big part of consciousness, is being able to speak up for ourselves. A conscious choice, still from an unconscious place as far as why we're doing it and the story we have around it, but it is a conscious choice, which is a step up from just not saying anything at all. So stepping up is still a step in the right direction. But look when we have to do that. Look at when we do that is when it directly affects us. When we're the ones that are directly affected. That's not okay. Now, because I have an animal that wasn't a house cat, it was a feral cat, kind of half, like I said, quasi-feral. It was a lot easier to catch him than I thought. He did really well. He did really well considering. So when I'm kind of looking at that and trying to, it's like when he gets in there, he's not considered as important as all the other animals. You know, it felt like I had to be talking to the vet about everything I wanted done to the animal when he's in there, because he's not a house cat. Because I'm going to go back and let him back outside once we get certain, you know, medical things taken care of. It's like kind of a micro look at how we feel about, the class systems in humans, there's a class system in pets. And it just kind of opens your eyes to a lot of this stuff and losing the mission of what we're here to do. When I pass 3 vets that won't see an animal that's injured because they're either not taking new patients, or they just don't have time. When I look at a waiting room where there's nobody there, we really have to look at what do we support. Now, I would not support any of those vets. All those vets yesterday that told me I could not have the cat seen there, I won't support any of them. I'm going to go back, even if it's farther away for me to support the vet that did see him yesterday, that's what I would do. Because they did support him when he needed support. Whereas all these other ones didn't. They couldn't be bothered. And you see a lot of that now also if you look at the human community. And a lot of times, you know, there's kind of a joke now, if you're sick, you can't go to the doctor's office anymore. They want you to go somewhere else. They don't want you in here. And there's a lot of reasons that's happening. You know, it just shows how much we segregate off, how much we don't really want to deal with each other, how much when we're in our human aspect, and these things are kind of driven by our human aspect, that it becomes like, okay, now it's serious. Now we have to do all these things. Now we're going to kind of feed into the fear of all these different medical things and what's going on in the medical community. And a lot of people have said, okay, we needed to revamp that for a long time. And that's very true. But the systems we have in place now can't revamp anything because they're still based on a human system. There's still a hierarchy there. And as long as there's a hierarchy there, you're not going to get anything that's going to service humanity. Unless it's to push humanity forward. So that's kind of a tongue twister, I guess. But there will be a lot of colossal things that will happen to humanity, air quote, to humanity, to push humanity forward. COVID was just one of them. You know, all the mass violence we see, that's just one of it. All of the natural disasters we see, that's just one of them. It's also the Earth becoming a star. She's raising her vibration too. And when she does that, she is purging in a sense. Everyone is so worried about Mother Nature. You know, we're so worried about, oh my God, she's not going to make it. Oh my God, global warming. Oh my God, what are we doing? Oh my God, don't worry about her. Don't worry, she's got it under control. Now, will humans be able to live on it after she's done? Probably not. Anyone in a human body, a straight human body, might not survive the transitioning that Earth is going to go through. But it's going to go through that cycle either way. It's going to be tired of the take that humans do to the Earth. Take. Another example of that, just like when I'm dealing with people who are veterinarians, this is the fresh one on my mind, that's why I keep using this example, but who are there to help animals, but I can't get one of them to help an animal because they're too busy with whatever. You know, I don't mind waiting, I don't mind doing this, I'm fine with that, but no, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to help an animal in distress anymore. We don't have time for that. We have time to just do whatever else we want to do, but we don't have time for that. Which is kind of goes and gets the whole thing about being a veterinarian. That in today, where society's at today, it's a lot different than how that animal would have been treated 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I could have found a vet to take them. Now it's like I got to go around 100 different vets. And the same thing, it's even a minor example of that. It's when you see trash in the street and you walk by it. Yeah, everyone's gonna go post on Instagram how, oh my gosh, we gotta help Mother Earth, we can't litter. But I just walk by trash every day. And that's when we really gotta look at ourselves and where do we not pay attention to what's going on in our community? What can we do in our community? Everyone will ask me, it's the question I get more than not about my soul purpose. I want my soul purpose. I want to go do my soul purpose. I want to go do what can shift humanity as a whole and can really drive humanity forward. How do I know what that is? And why don't I know what that is? We have too much crap in place to know what that is. We have too much shit in place to even know what our human purpose is because we're so wrapped up in ourselves and we're so wrapped up on not wanting to, we're so wrapped up in not wanting what our soul purpose is going to be to interfere with our human life because it's got nothing to do with your human life. And if we can't do the small things we see, we don't get the big things. Each small step we make toward our soul purpose, and you're not just going to have one. Spoiler alert, you're not going to have one. You're going to have many soul purposes you're going to do. There's not just one purpose everybody has. Everyone brings a unique spin on what they do. That's why there has to be everyone out there doing it. But there's not just one soul purpose you have, and that's the only one you have. You're going to have a lot of soul purposes. You're going to do a lot of stuff. But we can't even get to that stuff because we have so much stuff in our way that we can't even get to that next thing. You know, we can't even get to, we can't get to that next step. Now, if we don't listen to the small thing we can do, like, oh, I can give $30 to this stranger because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. For no reason, just because I feel like I'm supposed to do that. That's a soul purpose for that day. That's your soul purpose for that moment. You might feel like, oh, I'm supposed to go to these places today and be cheerful and be kind to somebody. And that's what I feel like I'm supposed to do today. And that's what I'm going to go do. Because today, that's your soul purpose. It's not this big transformational thing that you're going to be doing. It's the small things. In the beginning, it is the little things. You're supposed to, if we can't transform our community, how do we transform humanity? Yeah, I can go online all day long and say, oh yeah, I really want to support animals, or I'm going to gift money to this organization, or I can take a community animal that's injured and spend my whole day and a lot of money to get it back on a healthier path because it's injured. We have to really look at what we're willing to do. And what we're willing to do and why we don't do those things. We don't like how much it costs. We don't like how much time it takes. It's like, I wanted to do other things today. I didn't want to, I don't want to go sit in a vet's office for hours waiting to be seen with an animal that technically is not mine. It doesn't matter because we're here for each other. We're here for everything. We're part of the whole collective that is humanity. And how we feel about everything. We're not here to think about ourselves, and we're not here to do the easy thing. We're not here to do the quick thing. Now, anytime I get into this topic, there is this offshoot of where you have kind of that other side of the human aspect where they do everything for everyone else and nothing for themselves. It's the more sacrificial play. It's the, I'm going to use a lot of comic book references today, I guess, but it's sort of the Iron Man versus Captain America play. They're both kind of two sides in a sense in how they feel about things. Two sides of the same coin, right? But it's still a human aspect. One kind of thinks more about himself. The other one thinks about everybody else. Well, sacrifice like Captain America would sacrifice anything for someone else. And Iron Man, in the beginning of his journey, at the end it was a little different. They'd kind of come to a middle ground. They kind of, both, the two aspects that kind of integrated in, so they kind of became something else at the end of their journeys, but would kind of just want to do what was best for him, in a sense. And if it wasn't good for him, he didn't know if he wanted to do it. But you do have that flip side where, and I've known a lot of people that show this aspect. To me, it's not as common as the other one, where it's kind of the human aspect's kind of out for itself. You have the sacrificial aspect that wants to do everything for everyone else, and you do nothing for yourself. Now, the flip of that flip is that normally the people who are doing that because they want the recognition of doing that. So it's still something in it for them. It's just not as upfront as when we're just in our human aspect, and it's like, yeah, it's all about us. And I get so many comments that kind of don't want to believe the human aspect's like that, but it is going to be like that. Anytime you're dealing with anyone's human aspect, you are just getting the worst of them. Because that's what the human aspect is. It is the unconscious part of your soul. It's the part that is just, but it was also there to keep you alive. It was also to, air quote, protect you from certain things. Protect you from waking up. Protect you from consciousness. That was its job to do. That's what we agreed to let it do. When you get to a certain point where you kind of understand that's what you're doing. And you understand that, yeah, look what I am doing here. You know, why am I doing this? Why am I kind of going down this road where this is how I feel about, this is how I feel about all this stuff. Why do I keep doing it? So human aspect and humanity. Two completely different, trying to think of the spin I want to put on this, or the word I want to put on. They're just two completely different concepts in a sense. So look at what you're supporting. Are you supporting human aspect, or are you supporting humanity? Are you supporting a human system, or are you supporting humanity? Do you really think about anyone else when you make a choice? Because if you think about anyone else when you make a choice, or do you just think about yourself? Human aspect's going to think about itself. It's going to think about how it's going to trickle down. What's going to happen here? How is this going to trickle down? How is this going to get back to me? Well, how has this got to do with me? How is this affecting me? Look at really who you're thinking about. Now, as a part of this process where we have to think about ourselves in the beginning, because we never did. So you go from thinking about yourself in a sense of taking care of yourself and really looking at what you need and what your body needs. Because if we don't take that time for ourselves, we can't build up enough of our soul light to help anybody else, right? It goes back to that old adage, put your oxygen mask on first, If not, you can't help anybody else. And that's the same thing in consciousness. So there is a part of this journey where you could be in the phase where you're all about you, but all about you from a greater goal ahead, in a sense. It's all about you because you never cared about yourself. It's all about us, because all of a sudden I see how I've neglected myself. Because where your real power comes in, and that's your power to embody in your soul, it's your power to affect the energy field, your energy field, and to affect other people's fields, to be able to get more information about how your realities are created and why certain things come to pass. It comes through your connection. So if you don't have the connection inside, you can't do any of that. So it's a flip of why humans do it, because you're not doing it just for yourself. You're doing it for the long game. You have to look at the long game here. Like, if I don't take care of myself, then I can't do this. If I hadn't taken a lot of time to myself back, years ago, 15, 16, 17 or whatever, complete years really just to myself and working on building up the light I had inside of me, integrating more light. And even I'm still doing that all the time. You're never done with that. But I do feel like there are kind of plateaus in that. I couldn't do anything I do now. So it is the long game. So when you feel like you need to take a break, take a break. This conversation today is not about not doing that. It's about really looking at why you're doing it, and really looking at, are we kind of missing the forest for the trees? Are we not doing the low-hanging fruit because we're so caught up in everything else that there are simple things we can do? And it's not about money. You know, a lot of people say, well, if I had the money, it's not about money. There's so many things we can do that have nothing to do with money. And a lot of the times in the beginning, that's what we're going to do, because a lot of us don't have a lot of money in the beginning because we lost it all. We kind of played the crapshoot of life, and a lot of us over years or over supporting ourselves through a lot of parts of this journey, our money whittled down quite a bit because we couldn't engage back into human realities, and we couldn't engage back into a human job that supported a human system. After a while, we can't do that anymore. If it supported a human belief, for a while we can play in those things because we're there for different reasons. You know, we're there to fulfill soul contracts. We're there for us to gain a skill that we're going to use when we're in our ascension process. Later on, when we're doing our soul aligned work, we're going to need that skill. We're there because we're earning money in that system, but that money is going to support us later on when we get to a point where we can't do that job anymore. So there's a million reasons we're there. It's not that there are times we're not supposed to be there, but there will become a time, and you'll know when that time's there, when you can't be there anymore. It is just so distorted to where you are now, you can't support that. And a lot of people found that in COVID, not consciously understanding it, but they were getting really annoyed. You know, I would talk to people and we'd be out talking or something, and they get an email from work, you know, because everyone's kind of virtual or whatever during the COVID realities, and they would get annoyed. They didn't want to even deal with it in that short term, you know, and I went through that phase. I remember I was just working at home way before COVID hit, but I had this job where I just worked from home all the time, but I never had anything to do. It was really this great job I created. It was very boring, but I got to work from home and had nothing to do. But when I would have something to do, I'd get really agitated about it. Because I was like, oh my God, I have a whole day planned and now I got to do this, even though I was getting paid full time to be there in case anybody needed anything. When someone needed anything, I didn't want to do it. I would do it, but I was like, oh, well, that kind of ruins my whole day now. Now I got to go back and repackage everything and kind of reset everything. One, it's becoming too distorted to my field, and you could see how I could feel when I started doing that work that it changed the vibration of my body. My body went into a lower vibration to do that work, and it was also going to go in a lower vibration anyway to do the linear work I had to do, but it would affect me. And you can start to feel when you're fully expanded. Well, what's fully expanded for you at the time, that's always going to be greater. You're always going to be more fully expanded as you go. But in that moment, what feels to you to be fully expanded, all of a sudden you're not fully expanded anymore, because you now feel that you can feel yourself kind of getting squeezed back to do this job, and you don't like that. And then there's also the flip of that where we didn't appreciate that. You know, I didn't appreciate that. I only had to do this one little thing. So there's also a part of me working through that. I was getting annoyed, but in reality, I only had to do this one little thing, maybe an hour a week, and I was going to fuss about that. And that's my human aspect coming out and bitching a little bit about that. Because I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that at all anymore. But you go through so many iterations and so many different concepts, you know, and so many different parts of our process where it's aligned, it's not aligned. How come it was aligned before and now it's not aligned? Just because we change so fast. And when you're on a fast track and you're changing really fast, things materialize into your reality and materialize out at such a rate, it's very hard to keep track of it linearly. You can't anymore. And that's part of letting our linear stuff go, because we can't promise anything. I am very careful to promise anything. If I do promise something, I am very careful to word it a certain way. And if there's something I know I have to do, like I had something I had to do last week, I had to travel to do it, I knew that I had to do it. So I had to make sure I cleared everything and got a lot of rest and everything else, so I would be in a place to be able to do that. Because if not, then I was not going to be able to do it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up my chat. See if I have any questions or anything. Okay, quiet today. Usually Saturdays are pretty quiet. So I do want to touch on multidimensionality a bit. I kind of want to get back to that, because we had another movie about multidimensionality, and we have another movie about the multiverse, and we have another movie about, I haven't seen the movie, so I know what happens in the movie, but I haven't seen the movie yet. So I will do that disclaimer. I haven't really seen it, but I probably don't need to see it to kind of understand most of it, of what they're doing. And they bring in this concept of variance. You know, like everyone's got all these different variants. There's a zillion different parts of us. Now, I refer to them more as aspects, but it's kind of a similar concept as to what consciousness is when you start embodying in your aspects. It's all these different parts of you. Now, so far in the movies, they're only showing the parts of you that might not be awesome, right? They're showing the air quote evil variants, you know, the ones that you don't want, the ones that aren't going to be good for humanity. You know, those are the ones that for the storytelling purposes, they're kind of highlighting. But when we talk about multidimensionality as a whole, and consciousness and ascension, and embodying in your aspects, we're embodying in all the different parts of us across all the timelines. So when we look at this movie and we see zillions of iterations of the same person, and we're like, oh, that's crazy. What a movie, you know, oh, that's so imaginative. But when we talk about it on a stream, people think, oh, that's crazy. Why are you talking about it? That's just a movie. It's not just a movie. All these things are happening now to activate higher consciousness, activate multidimensionality in our body, in our cells. So we open up to the concept. If you can dream it, and someone can dream it and write it down, I mean, it's been in comic books for years, more niched, I would say, and now it's more mainstream now. It's kind of like a homeopathic stuff used to be kind of more niche. Now that's mainstream. Now that's more just the stream, you know? It's just normal now. Whereas before, it wasn't. And I feel like multidimensionality is kind of the same thing, though it's a human take on multidimensionality. It's not a higher consciousness take on multidimensionality, but we can kind of pull it apart and see kind of where it all is. You know, when we get to the scene where, I guess I've only seen recaps, but when we get to the scene where Ant-Man has to work with all of his different variants, but he's able to kind of work with everybody. They're kind of clones of himself in a sense. He can kind of, you know, the carbon copy of him in a lot of different ways, or different parts of him. And he can kind of figure out, oh, let's all work together. We can all do this together. Let's all work together. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the parts that can work together. Look at the aspects of us that we are trying to transcend, trying to get rid of, in a sense, because it's not who we are anymore. Now, our human aspect, and a lot of those are just kind of smaller parts of a human aspect. So if you kind of look at your human aspect, it's all those little distorted aspects you don't like too much. And how do we know when we're really trying to transcend one of those? How do I know when I'm trying to not kind of, it's all going to meld into your human aspect, which is still going to be there, but it's not something you're going to listen to. It doesn't have active control anymore, right? It's kind of banished in a sense. Where it's there, you might hear it from time to time, but you don't really listen to it because you know there's no truth to that. There's no truth to what that is. So when we talk about multidimensionality and we talk about transcending some of these aspects, a good sign you're transcending an aspect is when you're around a person you used to enjoy being around and you can't be around them anymore. You know? Now, this can go two ways. If you're around someone that is at a higher consciousness than you, then when you're around them and they're acting as a higher aspect of you, because everyone we meet is an aspect of us, so it's kind of the same thing, but they don't have the same face as us. Now, in a lot of dreams you'll see, in a lot of multidimensionality visions you're going to see, usually when you're sleeping, a lot of them come when you're sleeping, some come when you're awake. It kind of depends on where you are in your process. But in the beginning for me, and still a lot of those to me come when I'm asleep. So when I'm asleep, I'm able to see me's, different me's doing different things. Different me's that didn't break up with this person. Different me's that didn't leave that job. Different me's that didn't get divorced. You know, different me's that did a lot of different things. And I can kind of clear those timelines in a sense. Embody in those aspects. Clear those timelines. But a lot of times when I'm looking at different human versions of me, I'm more clearing those timelines out. So they're not in the way of me embodying in different things. I'm not strung out in a lot of different timelines, you know. But another way we look at that is when we just look at people in our life and try to figure out what aspect they are. You know, it could be someone that you do feel sort of acts as a higher aspect of you. But when you are transcending something, or you're working through a certain program, or you're really in a program, and you might not know you're in a human program in a sense, and that means you're working through something inside, you're very agitated about something, you're annoyed, you got a lot of stuff coming up, you're angry, you're pissed, you're sad, whatever it is, you're clearing something. Sometimes you don't want to be around a higher consciousness person. I don't want to hear the voice of someone that has a frequency like that, because I don't want to be triggered even more than I already am. And higher consciousness does trigger your stuff to come up. So I don't want to be dealing with that. You know, when I'm in a process of clearing, I'll want to go back to that later. So there is a part that's a little different than when you're with a person and you just don't enjoy it anymore. And you look at that and you're like, wow, I used to really like this person and now I don't anymore. I don't really want to be with this person anymore. I don't like this friend group anymore. I just don't enjoy it because you're transcending that aspect. So there's going to be a certain aspect of them that you're working through enough of that program where either they're going to shift out of some of that aspect too to meet your new aspect you're going to be flashing, or they're going to not be able to do that. When I say transition out, it means their strongest aspect is perhaps that aspect you're trying to transcend, right? I had a person in my life like this and I never could figure out why they were still there. I was like, I do not know how you are still in my life because we are so different as far as consciousness goes and so different as far as how we feel about things and how so different, just our feels are so different. I don't know how you're holding, you know? And then when I started really clearing I don't really like to use the word lack scarcity program because that's those words have been so overdone. But when you're really in that more of that root program of not having enough and worrying about that and always wanting more and you're kind of trying to clear that, I noticed the more I cleared that program, the more this person just started to fade out of my life. You know, so when you start to see someone fading out and you know you're working on something specifically, that's normally a sign that that's what they represented because they're fading out. Sometimes you'll let people drop out like that, depending on how attached you are and how deep that program is. The real deep programs, to me, the people who represent that kind of fade out a little bit over time and they just kind of all of a sudden they're just not there anymore. And when they are there, they flash a different aspect. It might not be an aspect they can hold. That's why they're not around you as much anymore. Because they can flash a higher aspect. And I mean that they can act from that aspect, a higher consciousness aspect, because everyone has those. But when I talk about someone being in their human aspect, that means that's the one they live from. That's their dominant aspect. That's the one they're going to make choices from. They're not going to be able, you can't make a soul-aligned choice from a human aspect. So when someone's in their human aspect and that's their go-to and that's the one they're living from 99.9% of the time, then it's really hard to be in a reality with that person after a while. You know, now if I get someone that now I'm seeing them less and less, but I'm getting a better aspect of them. I'm getting a higher consciousness aspect of them. Better is probably not the word I want to use, but for me, it feels more like an aligned aspect for where I am right now. And now I'm not getting them. The human is kind of just that I'm not getting that unconscious aspect anymore. I'm getting a little more of a conscious aspect. It might not be something they can hold, but I am seeing a flash of it. And that's why you can see when you first meet people, sometimes you don't see all the aspects they got going on. You see their soul. You see what aspects their most beautiful aspects. You don't see the real them, in a sense. And I say the real them because you don't see the aspect they live from. You just see the one they're trying to show you. And it's really exhausting to try to show an aspect when it's not your dominant one. You know, it's not easy to do that. It is a lot of energy. That's why they don't stay around. And you'll see people who used to be able to spend hours and hours with, and now you can't spend 10 minutes with them. Because they're trying so hard to stay in that aspect. And in doing that, they're taking a lot of energy, so then they'll start pulling it from you. And I say pulling it from you, just pulling it from pulling it from your field. Because they can't sustain it on their own. They don't have enough soul light to sustain it on their own. So you're going to have a lot of different things going on. So you might be super tired after spending 10 minutes with them, where you used to be able to spend 15 hours with them and it was fine. Then you'll have the flip of people you really could never be around, and now you want to be around and around them all the time because they're activating something else in you. They're activating a source of consciousness in you, a higher aspect of you. They're unraveling your DNA. They're helping you do this just energetically. You see that a lot when you have the twin flame stuff come up, that you want to be around this person all the time because they feel like home to you. You know, they have their frequency matches a frequency in you. They bring up emotions and feelings that you didn't know were there. And that's their point. The point is for them not to be there forever. And sometimes they might be, but sometimes they're not supposed to be. They're just supposed to activate that in you. So then you know you hold that and you don't need them to do it anymore. Once they activate that feeling with you, you don't need to do it anymore. You know, you don't need to. I do see a comment on energy vampires. And that's it's kind of the human take on it, but it is very similar. And it's not that people are doing it intentionally. I think when we call them vampires, it feels like it's something intentionally somebody's doing. Like, oh, that person's doing that. They don't know they're doing it. We used to do the same thing. When we were trying to sustain we have to feel it from the outside in because we don't have a connection within ourselves. There's not enough soul within our body because the soul's outside. We haven't integrated enough in to sustain ourselves. So we have to fill it with everybody else. We have to drain everyone else, but we're not doing it on purpose. There is this connotation. We've kind of put this thing on it like everyone's doing it intentionally. And it's an unconscious thing, but you'll know when you're in a situation because the energy signature is so different. The frequencies are so different between you and that person. Someone has to, if you're trying to sustain the field and you're the higher consciousness person trying to sustain the field, then it's your job to sustain the field. You know, the higher conscious person is the one, it's like in any power set, right? The more powerful person is the one in charge. And in a sense, when you're more powerful within yourself, your energy field has a higher frequency. You set a higher tone in a sense. You're responsible for the field. No one else is. You are. Which means we got to keep the field going. That means anywhere I go, I'm the highest person in the field. Majority of the time. I have to keep the whole field in check. I have to keep the whole thing up to where my field is. I can't dip down to be in someone else's field. But I can only do that for so long. I get tired. You know, and if I'm talking to a person and they're showing me a higher aspect of them, which means that they're not pulling as much or not pulling at all, I can do it longer. But the minute they shift that frequency, I feel it immediately because I get super tired. I'll start yawning and I'm like, I gotta go. I can't do it anymore. And I kind of puttered out. I have to go build myself up again because I can't sustain the whole field anymore. And you'll notice your field will start to expand out. You know, right now you might feel like, okay, my field just fills this room, but eventually your energy field will get so big, it'll go to the driveway or it'll go past the driveway. It'll engulf wherever you go, and then you're responsible. But when you get a lot of people in a room and you're trying to sustain the field, that's why you don't like to be around a lot of people anymore. A lot of us don't like to be around a lot of people because it's too much in our field. And in the beginning, it's really hard for us to do that. And you could see a lot of that happening to people in the COVID reality because they didn't want to be around people. But they didn't realize that before COVID because they were always around people, which means their field couldn't raise. But when they got separated from the group and they weren't using the group as sort of I'm going to use the word crutch. I don't really like that word, but I'm going to use that one here. That when they got separated, they had no other choice but to clear their field. And they had no other choice but to have their vibration increase as a result of that. They're not around people. The only thing we could do is go outside, raises your vibration. Or you could sleep, raises your vibration. People cut a lot of the stuff out because they were afraid for their life. First thing humans will do, human aspect, when it's afraid for if it's life, it'll cut out its mother. It does not care. That's what the human aspect does. And also will bring out some parts of humanity, but that's not the majority of what we saw. The majority of what we saw was hoarding and everyone looking out for themselves. That was a majority of what we saw. Everyone waiting for some magical cure. A magical cure to an ascension process that wasn't going to have one. You know, there was not going to be a magical cure. Because it had to happen that way. If it didn't happen that way, then everyone stays where they are. This pushed so many people, and no one was the same. Everyone didn't want to go back. They thought they did till they went back, and they didn't want to be there anymore. Because now they can't be around all those people, depending on where you are in your process. And all these things are depending on where you are in your process. But there's a part of ascension where when you're ascending your consciousness to a rate where you don't want to be around a lot of people, you can feel the drain. You can feel that it's not fun anymore. You know, I don't want to be here anymore. This used to be fun. It's not fun anymore. And everyone's like, what changed? Well, we changed. Our vibration raised. This is no longer a match. So we can try to hold it. But if we try to hold it, we're going to get exhausted because we're trying to hold something that's trying to leave. And the more we try to hold something that's trying to leave, it keeps us pinned down in that old reality and we can't go to the new one. We all want the next reality, but we get in this whole human conundrum where we want to hold on to the old shit, but we want the new shit too. I want this old vibration because I'm kind of used to it. I have a little obligation energy here. I would be sad to leave it. I have all these emotions that are going to be triggered if this goes. We think the things have to do with that, right? Like I'm going to trigger I'm sad because this happened, or it just triggers it in you. It triggers where you hold sadness, you know? It's kind of like when we said twin flames trigger where you hold that maybe love for yourself and you don't even know you have it until they trigger it. But it's not them specifically. They just activate the feeling within you. Something will activate that sadness and you know, you think, oh, it's about that person. It's never about anybody else. Always about us. If we're trying to look at a reason outside of us, it's not there. That's what humans do. Humans look at everyone else for the reason as to why this is upsetting. You know, I can even look at that yesterday from my whole experience trying to find a vet. You know, I'm getting super agitated and clearing all this stuff because I was so mad. I got so angry. I'm like, I'm so pissed. You know, I'm so pissed that this is how this is working out. One, I got to see a lot of stuff, but I had to clear all that being pissed. And once I cleared all that anger about the whole situation, then I was able to see why it's working out that way. What is this trying to show me? What can I do to not support that anymore? You know, what can I do to make sure this isn't going to happen to another animal? You know, what can I do here? What's my role here? You know, what is the purpose of this reality? Yeah, I can be angry. Now I'm not yelling at the people on the other end of the phone. No, because it's activating my own anger to clear. Let me clear it. Unless the person's disrespectful. And that's a whole different thing. If someone's disrespectful, then yes, we will speak up in that sense. You know, if I have someone telling me something and it's being completely disrespectful, that is a different story. You know, we will stand up and don't tolerate disrespect. Your higher aspects will not tolerate disrespect. Our human will. Our higher aspects will not. We will quickly align that situation, you know, as fast as we can. But if it's just someone dealing in a human belief in a human system, well, that's the system they live in. Now, today I have to play in that system because I have an animal that needs medical care urgently, you know, so in a way I got to play in that system. But I got to find a higher timeline where I can work with this, right? And that means I've got to shift myself into that timeline. You know, I've got to shift myself into this timeline, and as the more I cleared of the anger about the whole situation, I was then able to see other ways I could go. But I couldn't see that until I got in that situation, cleared the stuff on my own. Like I said, I'm not screaming at anybody in the vet's offices. I just was so mad. I'm screaming at myself in the car because I'm so pissed off at what's going on. But as soon as I clear that, then I can say, okay, let me regroup. I cleared all this energy. Now let me look at the situation. Now what's the highest line thing for me to do? Now what can I do? You know, is there another way I can get medical treatment for this animal, or is this just not supposed to happen that way? So there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be dealing with. But a lot of this is also like, these are your timelines. Now we have to align them. It's not up to anybody else. At the end of the day, the whole situation, I'm able to see a lot of different things. That's why I created the situation yesterday. I could see a lot of different things different things I could talk about, different things I could bring up in a conversation, and different things I could do to support the community that I might not have seen before. So I guess that's probably, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can bring in. So like 45 minutes. That's probably pretty good for today. I can't think of anything else I want to bring in. But it really just goes back to the end. We have to look at ourselves. What are we supporting? Are we supporting human? Are we supporting humanity? You know, what do we believe in? Where are we really gonna push our chips in? On which side? Because there is gonna come a time when you kind of have to pick a side. You're gonna have to pick whether you're gonna be on the conscious side or be on the unconscious side. There's gonna be no middle ground eventually. And a lot of us can stay in that middle ground for a really long time because we don't know we're there. We think we're on the consciousness side, and we're still really pegging in the middle. We are still riding that fence so hard because we don't know we are. But the minute we know we are, now we got to pick a side. And what are we supporting? And why are we supporting that? You know, what am I, when someone's explaining something to me and I'm listening to it, I have to, okay, what consciousness is this coming from? What are you trying to say to me? And I have to take that in and look at that and go, okay, is this something I'm going to listen to? Is this something I believe? Or is this just a consciousness that it's also testing me? You know, they're saying this stuff to test me. Are you going to go into fear? Or are you going to look at this for what it is? Look at it from a zillion different angles to see what it's trying to show you. Because comes back to us. The buck's always going to stop with us. You know, it's not about everybody else. It goes back to just people who say they're empaths. I feel everyone's stuff. You don't feel anyone else's stuff but your own. Buck stops with you. You can't channel anybody else but yourself. You can't feel other people's stuff. Not possible. You feel your own stuff. If they're sad, they're going to activate where you hold sadness. So now you're going to feel sad. The minute you clear that sadness, they can be sad and you won't feel that. It's always about what we're doing, how we feel about it. You know, whether we're going to step up or are we not going to step up? Are we going to say, okay, this is not okay. This is not okay to do. Where do we draw the line? Are we only going to say that when it affects us? When we can see other people being affected, but we're not going to say anything because it's not affecting us. The tornado didn't hit our house this year. So we're going to just not worry about where it hit over here because it didn't affect me. Where are we doing that? Why are we doing that? What do we have in place to, what belief system are we working with to believe that, okay, now I have that in place. I still believe that a little bit. I still believe that because human realities will always have a manipulation threat to them. You know, there's always a little underlying threat and a manipulation to human realities. That's how you know you're in one. Because it is trying to keep you there by threats. And that's all it can do. Because it has nothing else to keep anybody there. Everything else we build up in our mind. Okay. Now I think that's it. Okay. I'll see everyone next time. Bye.